There's this thing where the elite wear masks for some reason. The characters are encountering something that's like bad and not good because it's very obvious that not everybody is going to be making it out of this alive. $9 for a Kindle book, by the way. Because I don't really need to be like mentally projected back to 2015. It's just get the job done. She can't kill him at all. I don't know. There's vampires. I don't know. Seeing what happens in the real world affect my silly goofy little rom-com. Welcome to my catch-up reading vlog. I mentioned in my May reset video that I've been in a major reading slump, and I have been for about a month now. And so I wanted to do this reading vlog so that I can really push through, hopefully, this slump and also cross some books off of my TBR. So my number one book on my TBR is Daggermouth by Wolfe. I am currently 46% of the way done with it. When I got the idea for this vlog, I was like 20% of the way done with it, and I had been sitting there for about a month, but I did start reading it before I picked up the camera to film this. So we did make some progress. I am 46% of the way, which is chapter 19, and I'm reading it on my Kindle. That was my book club's book of the month for March, so I am very far behind, but that's okay because I'm gonna finish it. My second book on my TBR is my book club's book of the month for April, which is The Poisoned Daughter by Sheila Masterson, which I really know nothing about. I just know that it's my book club book, so I'm gonna read it. It's also on Kindle Unlimited. The third book that I actually want to read is The Deal by Elle, which is the first book in the Off-Campus series, which is also currently being made into a TV show that I think comes out also around May 10th. And so I just want to read it just to feel included, just to feel a part of something. I have read the I think it's called the Briar U series, which takes place after the Off-Campus series, but I have not read the Off-Campus series, mostly because it's not on Kindle Unlimited and it's not on the audiobook app that I used to use. So I will be purchasing this one, going crazy. But I think it would be a good palate cleanser in between Daggermouth and Poisoner's Daughter, or whatever the second one is. Just a silly, goofy palate cleanser, because reading fantasies and dystopians and like more intense books back to back can be very overwhelming, and if they're too similar, which I don't think these two will be, but if they're too similar, then I start to get them confused and start to like kind of mix up the plots and the characters and stuff. So a silly, goofy romance in the middle would be beautiful, I think. So those are the three that I really want to read this vlog. Like I said earlier, I'm like 46% of the way through Daggermouth. I am liking it so far. There's a few things about it that I really like, and there's a few things about it that I don't really like, so I feel like it's balancing out really well. I went into it also just reading. I just picked it up because it was my book club book. I didn't really know anything about it, but I am intrigued now by the storyline. I can't give a synopsis of this book because I don't know what the plot line is, but right now we're following what seems like 5 narrators throughout this story, and all 5 of them are in like slightly different positions but seem to be maybe on the same side, and they just don't know it yet. So I'm interested to see how everything plays out. There's definitely a love triangle aspect happening, and I think for the first time ever, I'm rooting for the first leg of the triangle. I'm back with an update on Daggermouth. I realized that I haven't really given much of anything about this book other than the fact that I'm going to be reading it, but I have been putting off filming this for a couple of days. So I have been reading, I just haven't been talking about it. So I'm currently 92% of the way through this book. And I can confidently say, as long as nothing happens in this last 8%, that I do really like the book. I am really enjoying it. It's a dark dystopian, is like what the genre is considered. And it is very, very dark. There is probably 1 million trigger warnings for this book. So it's something to be aware of. But basically, it's a dystopian set in this society where all of society's elites live, and it's called the Heart. And based on the cover, I'm assuming it's a real heart that they all live in. And it's made of glass. And then outside of the heart are rings. There's 2 rings. There's the cardinal, and then there's the boundary. And the further out you get, the more impoverished you are. Like, the worse your situation kind of is from the heart. And so our story centers around 2-ish main characters, one of which is a mercenary from the boundary. The other one is the son of the president, and he is also the executioner of the heart. And we also get a couple other point of views throughout of just like different people in the situation. And so our mercenary, Shadera, is sent to kill the son of the president, Grayson. And she gets caught, and there's this thing where the elite wear masks for some reason. And so she gets caught, and she has seen him without his mask, and so now she has to marry him, and they're getting married in this like political alliance where it's gonna show that like the boundary and the group that she's a part of is actually on the president's side, and this is like a union of both sides, but it's really not. And we kind of go from there. Like I said, I'm 92% of the way through, so I've seen most of the plot. And it is very dark. I don't read any dark romances, and I don't really read very many like dark books in general. And so this is for me the worst like violence I've sort of read. There's a lot of like pretty graphic violence against everyone, against women, against family members, and there's really extreme sexism. The women of the heart are seen as property, and it's kind of acknowledged in the book, it's almost backwards, where the women of the elite are seen as property versus the women of the boundary have like a much worse situation of like they're fighting for their everyday, but they have rights. So it's this kind of interesting like give and take, push and pull of like where you are and what pros and cons there are to your situation. Throughout the book, there's different characters who are playing different roles in the plot and the rebellion that's happening, and what each person is kind of rebelling for is different. I keep comparing this book to The Hunger Games with like the weight of it, and how the president is very similar, I would say, to Snow. Snow I don't think is as quite physically evil as this man is, but they both are very sick and twisted. They both have this like very sick and twisted society that they've built and that they stand by, and the weight of everything feels just as heavy as The Hunger Games, where it feels almost impossible. But what's interesting about this to me is The Hunger Games we get all from Katniss's POV, and she is the #1 most unreliable narrator. But this one we get from different points of view, so we get everybody's slight rebellions, some less, some more, and what they're doing and how they are impacted by this heart society and this world that they live in. And so I find that very interesting. But one thing that is very annoying about that is everybody is kind of doing something on their own, but they're not telling anyone else about it because they don't know who to trust. And then also even if they trust this person, they're like, if I tell them about it and somebody finds out that they know, like, we're both gonna be killed because they were complicit, just like guilty by association kind of. So there's a lot of keeping secrets, which leads to some miscommunication, which is really frustrating, but it does get, from what I can tell, mostly resolved, which I really appreciate, because it's kind of a really annoying time to have miscommunication when you're all kind of fighting for the same thing, but you don't want to tell the other person because you don't want to endanger the other person, and you don't want to endanger yourself, and you don't want to endanger your cause, and you want to make sure everything's going all right. So I am glad that that was kind of acknowledged in the book. There is, however, a lot of, like, going back to it being very dark and the society being very repressive and overarching, and there's cameras everywhere and they're monitoring everything, and you can't step out of line or else you get killed. Like, the penalty for literally everything is death. There's a lot of, like, random sentences whenever the characters are encountering something that's, like, bad and not good. There's a lot of random sentences thrown in where it's just, like, reiterating how awful this is, or, like, reiterating the fact that, like, everybody is going through this, or something like that. And sometimes those sentences would take me out of it, because I'm like, I can read between the lines. I know that this is a really bad situation, like that these things that are happening are bad and not good, and that the president is a bad and not good guy, but I don't need it to be, like, repeatedly said to me that it's like, oh, this guy really sucks, oh, this guy really sucks, oh, this guy really sucks, oh, this guy really sucks. And it's like, yeah, I know. His actions are speaking much louder than these individual sentences are of, like, look at what the heart has done to her. And it's like, I can see it. I just read the chapter. So those kind of took me out of it, but kind of related to that, and it's pointed out in these sentences that are throughout the book, is that everybody in this book is a victim. And I think that's super interesting, because we don't see it as much in the Hunger Games, where capital citizens may be a victim to something. But in this book, all of our characters are a victim in some way, shape, or form to this heart society. And it's not just, like, a mild inconvenience. It is like a crime against humanity has been committed against them. And we see how that impacts their decisions, and how that impacts how they move forward, and how that impacts how they view the society. I need to finish this book. I'm 92% of the way through, like I said, so I'm hopefully going to finish it tonight. And then I will give another update of my final thoughts. I'm hoping that whatever the ending is not a major cliffhanger, because I'm going to have to wait until March of next year to read the next book, and there's a lot that's going to happen between now and March of next year. And so I don't know how much of this plot I'm going to remember, and I don't even know if I'm going to remember to pick up the second book, because it's going to be very much, like, out of sight, out of mind. There are so many books coming out all of the time that I just don't always keep track of them. So I am also glad that I picked a Silly Goofy palette cleanser to read after this, because this has been very dark, and I do think I need something a little bit more Silly Goofy. I know that there's some trigger warnings to the deal, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as dark as this one, or at least I really hope not, because that would be crazy, and it would have been very, very badly marketed. I finished Daggermouth and I gave it 4 stars. I liked the characters, I liked the plot. I thought while it was very dark, it was compelling and interesting, and you were really rooting for the rebellion of it all, but you still had that feeling of kind of hopelessness with how truly evil the current power was, and how they seemed to have everything, like, surveilled. And so I felt like the author did a really good job of showing that, and showing, like, kind of how hopeless it is to rebel, but also giving you a little bit of hope, but also tempering it. I feel like the ups and downs were really well done. What really knocked it down a star for me is like I was kind of saying before I finished the book, there was a couple of sentences that were just thrown in there that I just feel like took me out of the book, of just like really reiterating how horrible the situation was. Instead of like, they showed you how terrible the situation was, and then they had like a little bit of dialogue or like the characters' inner thoughts just being like, oh my god, like this guy is truly awful. And it's like, yeah, I saw that in the last, I don't need, you know. So that really took me out of it. And then the ending, a typical series ending where a lot of stuff happens in the last like 2 chapters, major cliffhanger, which is what I was really hoping wouldn't happen, but it did. And so the ending was a major cliffhanger, and there was a lot going on. They really focused in the ending on the women of the heart kind of getting their day, like getting their comeuppance on the people that have hurt them. And to me, that just felt a little out of place, because while it was repeatedly mentioned throughout the book that like women were seen as property, and that, you know, all of these horrible things happened to them, and just like they were expected to be seen and not heard, and they were like trained to act this way, and it was all very terrible. I just felt like it wasn't a huge part of the story. To me, throughout most of the book, it felt like more of a detail, and then the very end they like really focused hard on it. And so that kind of, to me, felt like it came out of nowhere. Not that I feel like it was unwarranted, just that I was sort of like, oh, okay. So the ending, there was things that surprised me, there were things that I kind of predicted happening, so I am excited for the second book. I am interested to see what happens in the second book. I understand like where the power is going to shift to, but our characters are kind of in a sticky situation, and I'm like interested to see how they get out, and also who gets out, because it's very obvious that not everybody is going to be making it out of this alive. There's a couple of things that I like wasn't surprised about. There's a couple of things I was surprised about. So 4 stars overall. I thought it was really good. I thought the message was really strong. I thought it was well written, except for those couple of sentences that I was just like, I think what it is about those sentences that really got me was that the writing was good. Like, the writing didn't need these clarifying sentences. The writing was there. It was shown. What the author was trying to say was being shown. So I felt like the author adding these clarifying sentences and almost like these conclusion sentences throughout the book was kind of taking away from their own abilities. So I'm hoping that maybe that's something that many people are saying, so that in the second book they can kind of move past that, and we don't have to have this like constant reiterating of what I just read. But we'll see. Next up is The Deal, which I have started reading. I was right, I did need a palate cleanser after that book, just because it's one of those ones that like makes you think. And like I said, it to me, I don't read a lot of dark, like deep dark dystopian or anything like that, because I read as an escape. So like I don't want to escape to something terrible, so I'm very picky about which like darker themes, deeper themes, heavier themes that I read. So the best comparison I have is The Hunger Games, where you feel that weight, you feel the weight of what these characters are going through. And so I was not proud of myself, but like patting myself on the back for thinking about doing a palate cleanser after this book, because it was very much so needed. Okay, I finished Daggermouth last night, and so I'm about to start reading The Deal by Elle, and I bought it on Kindle. $9 for a Kindle book, by the way. It was the same price as the paperback, which is insane. But I'm about to start reading The Deal from the Off-Campus series by Elle, and basically, I know most of this book has been out for a long time. When was this released? February 2015. So I've obviously seen this book on the shelves. I've seen spoilers. I've seen the trailer for the TV show. I know generally what this book is about, but basically they're in college. She, I think, is just good at school, maybe, and he is a collegiate hockey player that wants to play professionally and needs a tutor, and she needs somebody to tutor her in the very typical, like, how to date, how to flirt, how to do all of these things. And so they make a deal, hence the name, where they're going to tutor each other in what the other person is good at, and then naturally they fall in love along the way. So I have read the series that comes after this about their kids, but I have not read this series, so I'm gonna start this today. I actually do have pretty high expectations of this book, just because I've heard people talking about it for years and people like raving about how much they love it, and it does have 4.5 stars 10 years later, so I do have really high expectations for this. I don't think I have unrealistic expectations. I do know what I'm getting into. I'm just expecting this to be entertaining, and I'm expecting the characters to be lovable. I will say, when it comes to these standalone romance series, I typically don't always love the first book. To me, a lot of times the first book is kind of just like setting the scene for the books to come. Like, you get the first book and you meet all of the characters and like most of the love interests of following books, and it's kind of like getting to know everybody before you get to their book, and then the main characters from the first book are just kind of there, and then they then become supporting characters in other books. Like, there's just been so many times where I've read a standalone romance series and I didn't really care. I mean, I obviously like cared, but the couple from the first book wasn't my favorite when I was reading it, but seeing them in the background of the future books I did enjoy. So I also wouldn't be surprised if that's what happens in this book, because that is what happened in the first book of I think it's the Briar U series, the series that comes after this, about their kids. I think it's literally this couple's kid is what the first book is about. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever, in like reading the book, and then as the series unfolded with more characters, I was like, oh, okay, I like you now that you're like not the main focus of everything. So that is that. I will start reading that today. I'm about to go to work, so I'm not going to start reading right now, but I will start reading that today. I hope, fingers crossed, to have it done by the end of the weekend. It is 342 pages, so I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the weekend. It's Friday, and I think that's very doable. It really just depends on how much I have going on, of like how much time I can read. So that's my goal, and then I will start the next book on my TBR, and we'll see how long that one takes. Also, I have not seen any of these books in person, and if I have, it's been a while, so I really don't know like how big they are, but that's my plan, and I think it's very doable. I am on chapter 11. That's 26% of the way through. They are setting up both of our main characters, Hannah and Garrett, to have... Hannah's is already like starting to flesh out a lot more, and Garrett's has just been like sort of suggested up until this point, to have like some sort of tragic backstory, some sort of like trauma in their past. So it's not like fully silly goofy, but the actual what's happening present day between the two of them is very silly goofy. It is also very 2015 writing. I'm happy that nothing has dated it to 2015. You know how sometimes like authors will include something that is actively happening, like they'll name drop like a song or a TV show, or they'll say TikTok or something like that, and you're just like, oh my god, like it just like really dates the book. Nothing like that has happened so far, which I'm glad for, because I don't really need to be like mentally projected back to 2015 to feel like I'm in the story. I feel like they've captured the essence of college relationships good enough that I don't need to hear like what was the trending song. in 2015, like what song was playing at all of these parties that they were going to. I don't need to be there like in that way. So it is very 2015. It's very 2015 romance. I feel like there was a huge kind of renaissance around 2020, 2021-ish, especially with The Love Hypothesis coming out, where a lot of these romances switched tones to where they were still rom-coms, but there was a little bit more of like a serious like vein through it to kind of ground it in reality, versus pre-2020 I feel like the vast majority of rom-coms were just rom-coms. And so the shift is kind of fun to read. It is very entertaining, and I knew exactly what I was getting into it, and you are getting exactly kind of what you expect. It's just kind of funny because we immediately focus on the physical aspects of the other character. They're pointed out constantly. We'll be reading from Garrett's point of view, and he'll be like talking about how he really wants Hannah to help him tutor him, and he really wants Hannah's help, and he really needs Hannah's help, and she's being so stubborn, and like why won't she do this, and like all of this stuff. And then he's like talking about how attractive she is, and how it's like, oh, like she really is beautiful and all this stuff. And then she's like has a crush on another guy, and she's like, why won't Garrett Graham leave me alone? Like I just want to live my life and go to rehearsals and do all of this stuff. And then she's like, but Garrett Graham is like built like a man and like strong and all of this stuff. And it's just like, okay, it's just a lot of like inserted in like, oh, this character is attractive. It's like, okay, cool, good to know. I feel like it is very college to have that. So I am excited to keep reading. I do think I'll be able to finish it this weekend. I think I'll be able to hit my goal of finishing it. It's an easy read. You don't have to remember, like, it's really the difference in what makes a rom-com a palate cleanser versus a fantasy novel to me is you don't have to learn the society, you don't have to learn the world building. They're at college. Every college pretty much functions the same. They go to class, they do whatever extracurriculars, they go party, they go home. Like, that's all you need to know. The characters are pretty simple. The background characters start to blur together, but like they're not that important. And so it is nice to just kind of be able to like read and not have to think and not have to be like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? Because you know what's gonna happen next. And I think that's part of what makes it such a good palate cleanser, is that you know how it's gonna end, so you do get to enjoy the journey, not the destination. Versus something like Daggermouth, you're like, how are they going to fix this the whole time? I'm gonna keep reading, and I will update you guys whenever I feel like I need to, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I just finished The Deal on the train home today, which means that we're 2 books down on my TBR for this video out of 3, which is a great success. We're 2 books down for the month of May. Great success. Very proud of myself. So I don't really have a lot to say about The Deal. It kind of was what it was on the surface. I think it was a very cutesy romance. It wasn't pretending to be anything other than it was. It wasn't acting like it was something new and different and crazy and bold. It was just a silly, goofy, cutesy romance between a hockey player and a music major. And I thought it was good. I gave it 4 stars. I was thoroughly entertained the entire time. I did like the characters the entire time. The writing was not the best writing in the world. It wasn't the most lyrical, the most memorable. It was very straightforward. The dialogue was very straightforward. It was very cut and dry. But I didn't think that really took me out of the book too much, other than to acknowledge that, like, this is not the best writing I've ever read in my life. This is not the best writing I've ever read in a rom-com. And that's okay, because it wasn't the worst, and it did what needed to be done without taking you out of the book, which really, at this point, is all I'm asking for. I think also this book handled some pretty, like, deep and sensitive topics at a very surface level without diminishing the seriousness of these topics. Both of our characters have some pretty intense trauma in their past that they come to terms with or introduce to their love interest, and the love interest has to come to terms with within this book. And it's very surface level. It's very like, this happened, it's not cool, I don't like it. And the love interest is like, I hate that that happened to you. And then they kind of move on. But I don't think that this necessarily, in the way that the author went about it, in the way that it was written, it didn't necessarily diminish like how awful these things are. It was just kind of like, it was just kind of there. And it wasn't even like just a plot point. It was a part of the characters. I feel like it was built into their character really well. So the author didn't have to like really go deep in it and like really try and do something with it. She could just have it be a part of the character, have like this issue made aware, and we can continue on as two college kids in love. So I really enjoyed that. This book also had a third act breakup, which normally I hate. Normally I hate when there's a third act breakup. I don't know why, I just don't like them. I feel like every third act breakup is for something dumb typically, or it's like they rush into things and then they change their mind. So like it always just frustrates me that we kind of like come over the hump of like why these characters aren't in a relationship or what's pushing these characters to get into a relationship, and then we're smooth sailing and then we break up and it's like, why do we need to break up? Like, why does there need to be a third act breakup? It just, most of the time to me, it doesn't serve the plot. I enjoyed this one because I think of how our main character treated it, how he went about it, where this is where the campus-wide hands-off rule comes into play. He is kind of just like, okay, like, sure, we're broken up, and then, you know, like, you'll come back to your senses. And then just the reason for the third act breakup also fit in with the story, fit in with the characters, fit in with the characters' backgrounds. So I feel like it was less of like a, we're doing this just for the plot, and more like, this is the plot, like this makes sense of the plot, versus like, I just need a device to move the plot along. So I did enjoy it. I did think it was like kind of funny how Garrett Graham went about it, and how he was just like, sure, yeah, sure, that's the reason you're breaking up with me, sure, whatever, and just like didn't take it seriously and was kind of waiting for her to like come to her senses and come back, because that's kind of exactly what happened. And it was just fun to read, where it wasn't just like this like horrible, depressing, disheartening like reason of like miscommunication in the most frustrating way, or like cheating or anything like that. It was just kind of like, it was also like not even a third act breakup, it was kind of just the ending was like right before it ended, they broke up, they got back together, happy ending. So I bought this book for $9 on Kindle. Will not be doing that again. The rest of this series is not on Kindle Unlimited, and the rest of them are also $9, so I will not be spending that again. $9 on an ebook is obscene in my opinion, especially because it's the same exact price as the paperback, and I don't want a physical copy of this book. I would rather borrow them. So I did place a hold for The Mistake, which is the next book in this series, centering around John Logan, Garrett Graham's bestie, but I am number 31 in line at the Chicago Public Library, so I will read that book whenever I make it to the top of the line for that one. I have no idea how long 31 holds is gonna take me, and I'm not like, I don't really care, I'm not like itching to read it, because I'll probably get to, like, I'm assuming it'll be my turn before season 2 of this show comes out, which is really like, that's kind of my deadline. So I did enjoy it enough to read the second book. I think I said this already, but a lot of times when I read romance books, the first one kind of sets the scene for me for the rest of them. I think that's kind of how I see this one going. I see this one being like a very good foundation for this series to kind of branch off and turn into something that I just would enjoy more. But I already enjoyed it, obviously. I ranked it 4 stars. So, also my star rating is really means nothing. If I enjoyed the book, it's probably 4 stars. If I finished the book, it's probably 3 stars. I very rarely give 1 or 2 stars, which I should probably fix, but oh well. My next book is The Poisoned Daughter by Sheila Masterson. So this was my book club's book of the month for April, and this ended this weekend, so I am very behind on this one. So this book is about a girl who has a poison kiss. So every man she kisses dies, and her family is kind of using that, I guess, as some sort of political ploy to move them through the city. I don't know why they're doing it. But she has a poison kiss, and her parents are arranging betrothals for her. Then she kisses them, and then they die. And then they arrange another one. And she also has a secret second life where she's luring in men who take advantage of women. She's kissing them, and then they die. So a little vigilante action. But now she's kissed someone, and he hasn't died. And plot twist, except not really, it's in the synopsis, he is her next betrothed, her next fiance, her next betrothed. So now she has to make him fall in love with her because he knows her secret. And she can't kill him with her lips, so I guess she can't kill him at all. I don't know, there's vampires, I don't know. Hello, I am back. It has been only a couple of seconds for you, but it has been days for me since I have picked up the camera to update you guys on my reading blog. So I do have a couple of updates. First and foremost, I did finish The Poisoned Daughter. So 4 stars, very proud of myself for getting that done, and now I can start reading my next book club book of the month. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I thought that the plot was well paced. I thought that the characters were very compelling. I thought that the world building was really fun and interesting. The way that the magic was granted to the citizens, the way that they went about it, the way that it was controlled versus not controlled. I thought the vampire aspect of it was super interesting. I just really enjoyed the book the whole time. I will say it is very impressive of me to have picked 3 completely different books to read for this vlog, and all of them have pretty solid trigger warnings, and all of them are not very safe for work. So that was something I did notice reading The Poisoned Daughter, was that there are trigger warnings in all of these books, and also something else. So I did enjoy it. It is very much not safe for work. It is very much an adult fantasy. But the story itself was good, the plot was good, the characters were super interesting. The character relationships and dynamics throughout our main character Harlow's family, and then also the foil of having Henry's family compared. The foil of having Henry's family right there for her to kind of compare apples to apples to, I found super interesting. I really enjoyed it. I don't really have a ton to say. I feel like for the most part, considering the fact that it is a 1-book fantasy, that everything got wrapped up very nicely in the end. Nothing felt like it was rushed or forgotten or anything crazy. I feel like everything was tied up pretty neatly with a bow. I enjoyed it. If you're interested in adult fantasy with magic and vampires, I say give it a shot. My next important update is that today's Saturday, the off-campus TV show was released on Wednesday, and I have finished it. I did very intentionally binge it because while, yes, this book did come out in 2015, and I don't really necessarily care to be spoiled for the off-campus book series, I wanted the TV show spoilers to be as minimal as possible, and I knew since it was released the full season that it was going to take over my TikTok, so I was like, I need to get this done. So I did watch the off-campus TV show, and I did enjoy it, I will say. I do I have been reading for a long time. I have been watching book to screen adaptations for a long time. I have watched many a horror story play out in my book to movie adaptation where they've just made changes that make zero sense. And I have watched many a book to movie adaptation where I can live with it. And this one is very much so one that I can live with. The only problem I had with any of the changes that they made in this series was the change they made to the end with, I think it was pretty much the entirety of episode 8, where I was just like, okay, I'm watching it as a TV show. If it was just a TV show, I would not have been upset. But having read the book, I just think the way the book ended and the events leading up to the end of the book were better than the way the TV show ended and the events leading up to it. That being said, if I had just watched it without reading the book, I would have been thrilled. So I did really enjoy it. I do recommend watching even if you haven't read the book, watching even if you have read the book. I had fun. I thought it was very silly goofy. I thought they captured the essence of Hannah and Graham's friends really well. I thought they captured the essence of being in college really well. And also something that I think is really interesting is that they did make adjustments specifically because the book was written in 2015 and the TV show is set in 2026. So college life is completely different. College athletics is completely different. I mean, in 2015, NIL was not a thing, and now it very much so is. And we had like an NIL, it wasn't like name dropped, but there was a full NIL plot line happening throughout the TV show, which I thought was really interesting to see, just like the changes. I am a lot more attuned to the sports world living with Chase, who loves sports. So I did enjoy that. That is how I enjoy sports, is seeing what happens in the real world affect my silly goofy little rom-coms. So I did like it. I did enjoy it. I am ready for season 2. I don't know who season 2 is going to be about. I haven't read the series, disclaimer, but I don't have any particular preference. If I care if it's Logan or Dean, I really don't care. So I'm just excited for season 2. I know it's been confirmed season 2. I just don't think there's been a release date yet. And I'm like almost positive it's going to be next year, but very, very excited. And then also my last update, I mentioned when I was doing my off-campus, the deal recap, that I put a hold at the Chicago Public Library for The Mistake, which is the second book in the off-campus series. And I was like 31st in line for 4 copies in the library system. And then yesterday I got the email that my copy was ready to be picked up. So I don't really know how that happened, but I have it. And I have, the next book is The Score. So I do have The Score on hold now. So we'll see how long that takes. I started reading it yesterday. I'm like halfway through. So that's super that's just so crazy. I don't even know how far I am in line for the next book that I've put on hold, but I'll just go pick it up whenever I get the email. Anyways, that is all for this vlog. I did not take any B-roll, and I barely wrote down my thoughts before I came and spoke them in front of the camera. I did not plan this at all. I still have not figured out a thumbnail for this video, but if you have stayed until this point of the video, comment down below the book that you are currently reading or your favorite book for the month of May. I would love to see, I'd love to hear, I would love suggestions, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.